Hi, we're back with, Wayside School Gets a Little Stranger, grand reopening. And so we're trying to catch everybody up. I just did chapters 1 and 2, and we're going to see how much we can get of chapter 3 and maybe chapter 4, if it doesn't take too long. Chapter 3, Poetry. Mrs. Jules told everyone to pick a color and write a poem about it. Huh? Said Joy. For example, said Mrs. Jules, if brown was your favorite color, you might write, at the circus I saw a clown. On his face was a great big frown. His sad eyes were big and brown. Could you repeat that just a little slower? Asked Joy. Mrs. Jules repeated it for her. Oh, I'm going to do purple, said Rondi. Rondi loved anything purple. You can't do purple, said Allison. I'm doing it. So Mrs. Jules didn't say two people couldn't do the same color. But purple is my favorite color in the world, said Allison. Rondi and Allison were best friends, but Allison always got her way. Rondi switched to blue. Joe raised his hand. I don't know what rhymes with red, he said. Mrs. Jules gave him a few suggestions. Bed, lead, wed. Think of words that end in ed. Oh, I get it, said Joe, and he set to work. Rondi tried to think of words that rhymed with blue. She raised her hand. Mrs. Jules, I chose blue. Can I rhyme that with zoo? Yes, that would be a good rhyme, agreed Mrs. Jules. How about glue? asked Rondi. Yes, that rhymes too, said Mrs. Jules. Oh, I know. How about stew? Just pick one and get started, said Mrs. Jules. You notice I know how to do that. Rondi smiled. This is fun, she told Allison. There are a lot of words that rhyme with blue. Allison grunted. Nothing rhymed with purple. In her mind, Allison had gone through every letter of the alphabet, Erple, Burple, Kerple, Durple, all the way to Zerple. But after making a big stink over it with Rondi, she couldn't switch colors now. Rondi was just about to start her poem when she got an even better idea. Love that's true. Poets are always writing about love that's true, aren't they, Mrs. Jules? Sometimes, said Mrs. Jules. Rondi smiled, except she really didn't know much about true love. Morning dew. Poets write about morning dew, don't they, Mrs. Jules? I believe so, said Mrs. Jules. Dana walked to Mrs. Jules' desk. I can't think of anything that rhymes with pink, she complained. Oh, I'm sure you'll think of something, said Mrs. Jules, and she winked at her. I can't think, said Dana. My mind's on the blank. I'm no good at poetry. I stink. Just keep trying, said Mrs. Jules. Dana returned to her seat, and she started to put her name on her paper, but her pen wouldn't write. Great. Now my pen's out of ink. Hey, Dana, whispered John, do you want to borrow my pen? Sure, said Dana. Too bad I'm using it, said John, and then he and Joe cracked up. Meanwhile, Allison was going through the alphabet for the 10th time. Merple, purple, orple, corple, she thought. My left shoe, exclaimed Rondi. You better choose something, Rondi, and get it started, advised Mrs. Jules. I got it! A bird that flew! At the end of the day, the children turned in their poems. Yellow, by Kathy. I don't feel too well. Oh. I don't know who to tell. Oh. I'm sick and I smell. Oh. My barf is yellow. Here's another one. Green, by Stephen. The swimming pool has lots of chlorine. It turned my hair green. The next one, Brown, by Joy. At the circus, I saw a clown. On his face was a great big frown. His sad eyes were big and brown. Red, by Joe. The fire truck is red. It hurried. The siren wailed. The house burned. The fireman saved the baby who screamed. Pink. My favorite color is pink. John is rat fink. What do you think about those? Purple, by Allison. The baby won't stop crying. His face is turning purple. Will anything make him feel better? I bet a burple. Funny. Blue by Rondi. That was as far as she got. Okay, I think we can get chapter 4. Dr. Pickle. Actually, his name was Dr. Pickle, with the accent on the second syllable, but that wasn't why everyone called him Dr. Pickle. Dr. Pickle was a psychiatrist. He had thick eyebrows and wore tiny glasses, and he had a small beard on the tip of his pointed chin. A psychiatrist is a doctor who doesn't cure people with sick bodies, he cures people with sick minds. Although Dr. Pickle had a pretty slick mind himself. One day, a woman came into his office, and she smoked too much, and she wanted him to help her quit. I know that smoking is no good for me, she said as she puffed on her cigarette. It's bad for my heart. It fills my lungs with gunk. And my husband won't kiss me because my breath stinks. But I can't quit. She finished her cigarette, smushed it out in the ashtray, and then immediately lit another. Have a seat, said Dr. Pickle. She sat down on the couch. Look into my eyes, said Dr. Pickle. The woman stared into his deep, penetrating eyes, and Dr. Pickle held up a gold chain. At the end of the chain was a green stone that was almost transparent, but not quite. It looked like a pickle, hence his name. Watch the pickle, he said as he gently moved the chain. The pickle went back and forth and back and forth, back and forth, and the woman's eyes went back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Put down your cigarette, Dr. Pickle said in a strong but gentle voice. The woman set her cigarette in the ashtray as she continued to stare at the pickle. You are getting sleepy, said Dr. Pickle. Your eyelids are getting heavy. The woman blinked her eyes. When I count to 3, said Dr. Pickle, you will fall into a deep, deep, deep sleep. 1, 2, 3. The woman's eyes closed. Dr. Pickle put down the pickle. Can you hear him? Can you hear me? Yes, said the woman in a low voice from deep inside of her. You will do what I say, said Dr. Pickle. I will do what you say, said the woman repeated. I'm going to count to 5, and then you will wake up, and as usual, you will want to smoke a cigarette. I will want to smoke a cigarette, the woman repeated. But when you put the cigarette in your mouth, it will feel just like a worm, a squiggling, slimy worm. A yucky, ucky worm, repeated the woman. Good. Now just one more thing. He rubbed his beard and he smiled. Whenever your husband says the word potato, you will slap him across the face. When Fred says potato, I will slap his face. Good, said Dr. Pickle. He counted to 5. The woman woke up. So do you think you can help me? She asked in her normal voice as she reached for her cigarette. Dr. Pickle shrugged. She put a cigarette in her mouth and then screamed as she pulled it out. She looked at the cigarette, puzzled. Huh, she said. She placed it back in her mouth, then spit it on the floor. Oh, I'm so sorry, she said, a little confused. She picked up the cigarette and put it on the ashtray. That's all right. She took out a new cigarette from her pack, but as soon as she put that in her mouth, she spit it out too. I am sorry, she said again. I don't know what's come over me. She walked out of his office, shaking her head. She dropped her pack of cigarettes in the trash, and she never smoked again. It was an interesting thing about the word potato. Whenever Fred said it, she slapped him, and he'd ask her why she slapped him, but she never remembered slapping him, so they'd get in a big fight, each calling each other crazy, and then they'd kiss and make up, which was nice because her breath didn't stink. They never figured out it had anything to do with saying potato. How could they? But deep down, they both must have realized it somehow, because while they used to eat lots of potatoes, they gradually ate fewer and fewer until they just finally stopped eating them altogether. Dr. Pickle was a good doctor, but he kept playing those kinds of jokes on people. There was a woman who quacked along like a duck whenever she saw a freight train with more than 20 cars. There was a man who took off his shoe anytime someone said, "Parking meter." Eventually, Dr. Pickle was caught and he was no longer allowed to practice psychiatry, so he had to find another job. He became a counselor at an elementary school. We're going to stop right there and we'll start next week with Chapter 5. Bye.